We're back with the second segment of Talking Law TV here with Doug Andrews.
Michael.
Hi, Doug.
Howdy.
Talking about DUI, bleeding or blowing.
Hopefully you'll never have to do either.
I hope not. This is all when you're after you've been pulled over.
And how do you avoid having to make this choice?
I would say no. Just say
How
no.
do you
Nancy
avoid-
Reagan had the answer.
How do you avoid having to make the choice?
Don't drink and drive.
There you go. It's not a crime, but it's foolish. It's not a crime unless you're over the limit or impaired, but it's foolish because the police are going to suspect you're guilty and want you to prove otherwise.
So we've already been pulled over because we talked about that a couple weeks ago. Officer has you out of the car. First thing we have are the tests. Do we want to take the test?
Maybe.
And we have an example of one of them, I guess the balance test.
Are you an Olympic caliber athlete? Can
Not-
you do triple backflips with no problem?
I think not.
Then think twice before you do it, because here's the deal in a nutshell with the field sobriety tests. They are designed, validated to detect a BAC level, not whether you're impaired or not. You don't have to take these tests to get a license. The officer, by training in his course of instruction he has to complete, is told, don't let the person practice. Even professional pitchers get to practice and then
Sure.
they take the mound. They've been doing it all day long. They still get a couple warm-up throws. So you're not allowed to practice, and you don't know how to pass. You don't know what they're scored on. How can you pass a test if you have never been instructed on what the right answers are?
So if the policeman pulls you over and he starts to ask you to do this, can you just say, let's just get on with it?
Yeah, and his response will be, okay, sir, put your hands on the hood. Because he's going to go on what he knows at that point. And all that officer might know then is odor of alcohol. And if he detects that, you've probably had a drink sometime earlier. So he knows that there's been some drinking. He asks you that, and you say, yeah, I had a beer an hour ago. So you've admitted to some alcohol. That's all the officer hears. Ah, he's admitted drinking. He doesn't care what you say because he doesn't believe the number. He's going to use his own senses to make up his mind on that.
But it was spilled on me. I didn't have any.
Yeah, I've had bartenders say that too.
Yeah.
And the officer will say, well, I detected it from your mouth, breath alcohol. Did it fall into your mouth?
So the next thing is they want you to blow into the portable breathalyzer. Is that something we're going to do?
If you've had no alcohol and you don't have diabetes and you haven't rinsed your mouth with Listerine or chewed on any gum or smoked any cigarette in the past 20 minutes, yeah, take a gamble, roll the dice, blow into it. Maybe you'll be negative, but that is a non-specific device for alcohol. It has no mouth alcohol detector. It has little ability to detect interference, and so you can get a false positive reading. That's why the number that's displayed on it is absolutely inadmissible in court by the prosecution. They can't state what the number is because it's unreliable. It's not trustworthy. So the officer's supposed to use it only for a clue that, yes, the person has been drinking.
Okay, and then they take you back and do a real one.
So where you refuse the test, the officer's going to say, well, odor of alcohol, admitted to drinking. Sounds all pretty bad, doesn't it? Oh, odor
So
of
far,
alcohol,
I'm looking
admitted to drinking. And, oh, midnight, his eyes were red and glassy. Okay, what does that mean? Smoke-filled environment. So if you refuse testing, he's going to say, based upon the fact that I saw you touch the white line, I think you're a less safe impaired driver by that alcohol you had. All he needs is probable cause, a very low level of proof, probable cause. That's the same level of proof necessary for a judge to issue a search warrant, for them to file an accusation to put you into the courtroom or get a grand jury indictment if it was a felony. All of that's at a probable cause standard. Criminal trials are decided on what standard? Proof beyond reasonable doubt. So you're at a very low standard for that arrest. And Georgia law right now is going to say, probable cause? Why, sure, that's odor of alcohol. And any officer that's honest will admit that odor doesn't prove how much you had to drink, when you drank it, what you drank, or its effect on you, whether it's strong, weak, or moderate odor. It doesn't tell you if you're impaired, just that you had something earlier. But they all act like it means something. I mean, we shouldn't even introduce that into evidence. It has no relevance. Or if he admits to having a drink, doesn't matter he had an odor. You'd be surprised if he didn't. So if you are satisfied that you have no health-related issues, go ahead and give it a shot. Blow on it.
Now, if they're going to take you in for the breathalyzer 9000 test,
we're up to 5,000.
Oh, the 5,000. Okay.
Florida's up to 8,000. Of course, Alabama dumped the Intoxilizer 5,000, and I like to say, if it's not good enough for Alabama, why have we got it? Anyway, they will ask you to submit to testing. But guess what? You've already been cuffed and stuffed. You've been arrested for driving under the influence. He's read the implied consent warning telling you that Georgia law requires you to submit to testing of your blood, breath, urine, or other bodily substances. We're all afraid to know what those other bodily substances are. He then asks you to submit to testing, and he gets to choose the test. The officer gets to choose the officer's test: blood, breath, urine, other bodily substances. Very little urine used anymore. So most officers will pick breath because it's easy to do. They may be trained to run it themselves. Otherwise, they have to track down an EMT or a phlebotomist on the police force, and they do have a couple that'll come to the scene and draw blood if the officer wants it.
Do they charge you for this service?
No, not for the state test. But you're already arrested for being a less safe impaired driver. You're arrested. Now they want you to give more evidence so they can add a second charge for being over the limit. What's in it for you? Is he going to unarrest you if you blow low? Not usually. I've had 3 cases recently from the State Patrol, the Night Stalkers, who are issuing DUIs for under 08 people. Under 08. 08's the violation. They tested at 07. They still charge them with DUI.
But how do they do that?
Because they're claiming that they were a less safe impaired driver. If you're less safe under subsection A1, it doesn't matter what your BAC is. If you're impaired to any extent, you can be charged with DUI, because that's why you're arrested. Then they want to make the second charge under A5 for an unlawful BAC, but if you're not over the limit, they'll say, well, he was impaired. He was less safe.
So what do you do, Doug? When you're pulled over and from the time they walk up to the window to whatever happens?
It's not an easy question to answer. I tell folks, for future reference, most people are sitting in front of me have already been arrested and they're facing a DUI charge. And so the ones that have a refusal against them, they may lose their license for a year, a hard year. Some people can't live with that. If you can't stand that risk, take the test. If you can afford to face the refusal possibility, decline the test if you think the DUI is unjustified, or if you believe you're absolutely toast and you need to fight it because you're an airline pilot, ship captain, or whatever. Because in the courtroom, if you have a less safe charge, which you will, and a BAC violation, you have 2 fights. Us against the police officer's opinion that you're less safe, and us against the machine's opinion that you're over the limit. Would you rather have to kill 2 ninjas to save your life or just 1?
Okay.
1 is probably easier to kill. Hard to kill both. So if you refuse, all they got's 1 to fight.
Okay, so the bleed or blow, neither one.
In many cases, that's the right answer. In some cases, it may be better to blow. Maybe the officer will say, yeah, you're only 02. But you know what they usually do then? They say, oh, it must be drugs. Bring in the needles. Let's draw blood. Must be something. I can't be wrong here. Okay. So then they have the right to do both.
So we're going to go from DUI to weapons, and we'll be back with more right after this with Doug and viewer mail.